Okay. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Today we are going to be talking about leadership, innovation in a moment of crisis. And I have two warriors who are joining me for this conversation. First, Shauna Young, who's the CEO of Camelback Ventures. And Wisdom Powell, who's a leader in mental health equity and youth well-being. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves in more detail. But before we get there, how many of you are watching the news right now? Okay, a lot of people have turned off the news. If you are watching the news, you recognize that there is a structural and systematic dismantling of our democracy that is happening day after day after day. You also recognize that black people are being disproportionately impacted by what's happening in our economy. More than 300,000 black women are leaving the workforce or have already left the workforce. We also know that the unemployment rate for black people is skyrocketing. During the Biden administration, it was about 5%. Right now, it is more than 7%. And increasing, unfortunately, despite the narrative about black jobs, which we'll talk about. So what we want to focus on now is, given everything that's happening, given the threat to democracy, given the impact that it's having on our families and our communities, how do we approach leadership? How do we approach innovation, and what's next? And again, I have two leaders who are going to help us dissect this question. And first, I want Shauna to formally introduce herself to you, and then Wisdom, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Thank you, Alfonso.
We can't hear you.
You're on. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alfonso. Welcome, everyone. My name is Shauna Young. I'm from Fayetteville, North Carolina. I'm the CEO. Hey, okay. I'm the CEO of Camelback Ventures. I started about 18 months ago, and my parents own a gymnastics business for over 36 years. When I think about entrepreneurship, you know, I really didn't understand the legacy my family was building when I was a teenager. I just remember as a child of entrepreneurs that the business came first and their staff and team came first. And we had to make sacrifices to build a community business 36 years ago that now have served, you know, hundreds and thousands of young people in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So as I sit at the helm of Camelback Ventures at a very opportune time, I reflect on the sacrifices of my family, and I think about that this is now a time for opportunity, because the systems that we are used to navigating, especially as black people, as people of color, as black women, as women, and also as a society, these systems were not built for us. And so it's being dismantled, and I think it's an opportunity for us to think about entrepreneurship is an opportunity for our community, black folk in particular, to build businesses. So at Camelback, we give early capital to entrepreneurs in education and in technology, for-profits and nonprofits. We've done that for 10 years. We've deployed over $9 million to 200 entrepreneurs, and they have turned that into over $365 million in follow-on funding, and impacted over 5 million lives around the world. So I do believe entrepreneurship is an opportunity for our community, and now is the time to act.
Wow. Thank you. Wisdom, take it up.
So I'm following Shauna Young, y'all. So first of all, I just want to thank my co-panelists for this opportunity to be a part of this pivotal conversation. I come to this conversation wearing many hats. I'm a healing justice practitioner, a trauma psychologist, and a person who's worked across different sectors, both philanthropy, government, and academia. And in all of those roles, what I learned is that it was my creativity that was the reservoir of the disruptive innovation I was introducing everywhere I went. I am also the granddaughter of Eddie Powell, a Korean War veteran, single father of 9 children, who, because of his ingenuity and his desire to seek warmth of other sons, I get to sit right here. My grandfather was pioneering at the time what it meant to be a father and to actually instill in his children seeds that would inspire them to want to seek to make the world a better place and to use ancestral technologies to do so. When I think about the work that I'm doing right now, what is most important to me is thinking about the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators. When I think about disruptive innovation in the time that we're in now, where augmented intelligence is rapidly shifting the way we think and how we think day to day, I think about the creative resilience that we need to invest in. The World Economic Forum suggests that the new skill of the future will be creativity. And if there is nothing that Black folk, brown folk, indigenous folk bring to the table, it is the capacity to pivot, invent, and become innovative in moments of rapidly shifting environments. It is what we are built to do. It is in our DNA. And so my work is all about trying to help people think about the interior lives, because I think when something's being raised, meaning something's being changed, there's an opportunity to do something different, to shift, so that we're thinking about wonder and imagination and all that we possess to bring to bear new fruits to our community. So I'm excited about this opportunity because I never thought the system was working that well for all of us anyway.
So let's spend a few minutes talking about the system, and then most of the conversation will be focused on opportunities. But I do think it's important for us to frame where we are now. So we are seeing a dramatic cultural, economic shift in this country. And I'll ask both of you this question. Where do you see the most significant impact for Black people? And if you want to talk about Black women specifically, certainly feel free. But where are you seeing the most significant impact?
I think, looking at the numbers, it's very disparaging. And looking at where we concentrate ourselves. So when you see the hit to the Department of Education, when you see the hit to Human Services, we know that Black women in particular anchor in those communities in that work and also in DEI. And so I think about how we can be more innovative in how we do our work and an opportunity for us to start businesses as an answer to basically this strategy of going after careers in which most of us as Black women are anchored in. And so if we have businesses in those areas, I think it's more opportunity for us. I would start there.
Okay, what about you in terms of healthcare?
I mean, as I look out at the healthcare landscape, most of us are aware that as I mentioned in my introduction, that augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence, is shaping the way care is delivered. And I think that in this moment, we have an opportunity to be at the table, having those conversations, making sure that what we're building meets us at our highest intention for radical healing. The challenges right now with healthcare innovation is that we are leveraging all of the power of these emerging technologies in ways that have the potential to override human capital. And so I think that as we think about this next wave of healthcare transformation, we have to think about how we can ensure that humans are kept in the loop, and particularly that our intelligence gets baked into the innovations and the care delivery models that are happening. Therapy, for example, that used to be a one-to-one human interaction or group interaction, depending on your care experience, is now being delivered through AI. And I think we have an opportunity to be canaries in those mines because, I've often had this tension in my spirit around, what do we do now that this is happening? Do we rail against it? Do you speak up and out about it? Because if you do, then you can be labeled as someone who is resisting progress. But just because we can doesn't mean we should. And I think that as we're thinking about healthcare transformation now, we need to think about the kinds of care disparities that we've been grappling with all along. And if we put the same kinds of care practices into the technologies, it will give us the same type of care delivery. So we have a moment now to reshape care so that it truly meets our people where we are in digital and kinetic environments.
Yeah, and I would add to that too, because for us, we're investing in technology, early stage technology, and many of our founders are people of color and women and Black women. And we find that the models that exist for AI in particular were not built by us. So when we see what's coming out of all the things we use from chat to Claude, they don't give us back data that's representative of our own communities. So we have to invest in, we have to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
You know, we have to invest now in, and then when we're part of that solution, we have to use those technologies so we're feeding those models, right? So we can change the outcomes. So I think in particular, making investments in technologies and technologies developed by people of color and women in particular.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to take a step back because you all are getting way into the weeds.
Okay.
So I want to just take a step back. Imagine you're talking to someone who just lost their job.
Sure.
Imagine you're talking to someone who thinks they're about to lose their job. And you're talking about innovation and you're talking about leadership in the healthcare space. You're talking about investments. What do you say to that person about the next step for them?
Well, I mean, in that instance, my call to the altar is always to make sure that you're paying attention to what's happening interiorly. Because what happens in moments when economic, pivots or shifts happen or you lose a job, the first thing you do is start to demoralize yourself. There is something cognitively, your threat activation system, neuroscience tells us, gets activated in that moment, and you start to question your values and your worth and your potential. And I think that what I would say to someone at that moment is hold steady. Begin to see yourself clear. Understand that you're not just because something has shifted in your work environment doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. I think the one thing that we have all become accustomed to in hustle culture and work culture is moving on to the next thing immediately. And sometimes necessity requires that. You have a family to feed, you have responsibility, so you must get on to the next thing. But if you have the opportunity, if you've just lost your job or your position, I would say take this moment to breathe. Rest is resistance, as Tricia Hersey reminds us. Oftentimes we don't realize that in those moments, if we give ourselves the pause, you can't see yourself in running water, as the proverb says. So take the moment to pause, gather yourself, and focus in on what's right with you. Because I think that overriding that psychological banter in your head that tells you, oh, they let you go because you were the weakest link or there was something wrong with your capability. This is the moment I would say, it is not you, honey, it is them. It is time now to reimagine who you want to be in the world and how you want to use your gifts. Each of us have that in us, planted deep within us. There is a reservoir of possibility and purpose. Our ancestors knew it, their ancestors knew it. There is nothing about this state of being that we can't overcome if we pause. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
What's your answer? And that's...
Thank you, Wisdom. A lot comes to mind. One, with my instinct was take time to learn. Doesn't mean you have to go back to school and get a degree, but there are so many resources at your fingertips to just take time to think about skill development, what you want to do next, learn something new. I'll also share a personal story that I do not often share at all. I was one of those black women hired after the murder of George Floyd into an executive director role in 2021. And after 2 years, it was evident that it just was not a match. So being a person on the receiving end of understanding that I could no longer hold the job that I thought was the one for me, abruptly, I had to take time off and pause. I had gone from one role to the next. I was climbing the ladder and I thought I was where I was supposed to be with all the things materialistically that I wanted. But I wasn't in a safe place. I wasn't in a place that fully honored what I could bring to the role. And I had no choice but to stop and pause for months because my brain and my body would not move further. And so I really value what you're sharing, Wisdom, around that, because we often think it's in our blood that we must persevere. But what I shared in another talk a few weeks ago was like, this is a marathon. The game is to get tired. We cannot get tired as a people, but we can rest. We can take turns in that. And so I do believe that we should be reflective. I take long walks. I call my friends, my family out of the blue, and I'll just talk. And then I reset. And I realized when I was working 80 to 100-hour weeks at MIT, thinking that I was doing the good work, which I was, and going to school at the same time at MIT for MBA, I was not strategic. I was running on fumes. And I had to step back and say strategy development has to happen in the calm. So we have to create those moments for ourselves.
So you both are touching on this concept or this theme that when there is disruption, there are opportunities. And now that we've sort of covered the landscape for what we should do if we're directly impacted or we believe we're about to be impacted, what do you think are the pathways? Where are the opportunities that we need to start thinking about, whether it be in the entrepreneurial space or in the healthcare space or other spaces, that the folks that are going to be watching on YouTube later or the folks that are here, what should they be thinking about in terms of new pathways, new opportunities that we need to explore that we may be blind to?
Yeah. I'd almost say, can I reflect on like a feeling real quick
Sure.
as we go into that? What I find interesting about this moment is that there's something in my body that says, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And I know it's not coming from me. I know it's from my ancestors. It's almost eerie, but I am not afraid. And I don't want anyone to be. I feel like this is our moment, and we could have never planned it. We never would have thought it would have come out of what is happening right now, right? But literally, when would there ever been an opportunity to reimagine the Department of Education? As a person who's been in it for over 20-some years and tried to work around all these systems and measures that I knew in the classroom as a teacher was not defining my children. My children were not test scores. But because they tested at a certain level, our whole school was deemed inadequate. So I feel like it's time for action, more than discussion. It's time to be bold. It's time to be creative and innovative. It's time to merge ideas and systems and businesses and build all together. And so I think about how we have sort of this moment of even this time together at Martha's Vineyard. How does that happen monthly, weekly? How are the phone calls after this? How are we collecting? And because there's so many innovators in our own community, but I see disconnection. So my brain goes to how do we build the connective tissue? And we are unstoppable.
I love that you use connective tissue, by the way. So we didn't talk about this before, but I'm feeling it. Because I think you're absolutely right. What I think about most in this moment is how do I, as the spiritual says, study war some more? And by that I mean, how do I go back and learn and relearn what the architects of Black Wall Street did? Yes. What did Black folks do during periods when mutual aid was the premise of how we gave, received, and multiplied our economic capacity? What did we do when they burned down Tulsa and other places? Like, how did we rebuild? We certainly didn't go back to a handbook that wasn't written for our survival or thriving. And how do we build systems now that truly amplify what we know to be true, that economic and psychological and community healing and resistance and resilience are intertwined? That possibility now that we have to build the workplace of the future, to move beyond terminology that we just shape-shifted ourselves into, like psychological safety and all of that. How do we reimagine workplace culture so that it's truly built on the best of us and doesn't grind us into dust on the pathway? I think that we have an innate ability as people who have had to overcome to reimagine all the time. So the shape-shifting possibilities are endless, but how do we then reapproach this so we're not just rebuilding what was there before? Because it's gone. Like I've said that to my colleagues, like you can have the ceremony and the funeral for all the things that have been laid to rest, or you could start to think about what can you build instead of that, because it was never fully architected in a way that was meant to help people have a holistic way of being. Work doesn't have to be about you doing all the time. There is a way in which we've always understood that, and yet we have not been able to architect the economic or marketplace conditions that really rise up to meet human beings. I think this is the moment, not just for reimagining, as we say so tritely all the time, but really to think about what is it that I want to build for the true liberation of a people who are darker than blue. I mean, I'm always going to bring in the song because, I come from, if you don't know Curtis Mayfield, then go check out the song. But I think we have an opportunity now to really think differently and architect systems that actually look quite different from what we have now. But it requires us not to just try to go back and grasp what is already been laid to rest. That's what I would say. Step into this moment.
I would like for both of you to give us a concrete example of what you're seeing right now in the marketplace that could be instructive to folks that are listening about new pathways. Like, what are you seeing in the marketplace? A new approach in healthcare, a new approach in entrepreneurship. And I'll bring in Melissa Bradley in a minute because I want to talk about the Fearless Fund and what we did there. But before we get to that case, I want to just talk about what you're seeing. One example that you think could be instructive for the folks in the room as we think about new pathways. Because sometimes we talk about these concepts, and that is really difficult to tangibly tie them to something real.
Right.
So what do you think that thing is? And it doesn't have to be something that's definitive or something that is now a publicly traded company, but what do you think that concept could be?
Okay, I got 200 founders, so I'm gonna pick one that stands out because I really like her model, Reducify with Aisha. And the idea there is you take your if you have a student loan, you went to college and had to get a student loan, there's 6 month grace period. And so she's thinking about building a technology where if you make payments during that 6 months, it actually greatly reduces your student loan over time. So what I like about is this creativity around one specific task that we typically don't even think about. Actually, I remember I loved the 6 months off. I was like, yes, I don't have to pay anything. But I would never have thought about it being a business opportunity. So at Camelback, that's just one example of multiple ways in which our founders are building technologies, building new school models, building future work, for-profit and nonprofit around the country. And I have lots more that I can share, but I think it goes back to this idea of candidly giving that friends and family round to yourself and to entrepreneurs in your community and your own family. One of the challenges we have as entrepreneurs is that we don't have enough money to get started. And often black entrepreneurs start with $20,000, their business is on $20,000 of credit card debt. And so their white counterparts are starting with $100,000 to $250,000 of startup capital in their friends and family round before they get to any other type of raise. And so really thinking about how we can still lean on our own philanthropy and seed our ideas with more dollars. And the other follow-on challenge with that is we're underfunded from the beginning, and then we're looking for black investors to put their smaller dollars sometimes into underfunded ventures. So we've got to figure out how to solve for that system. I'm sure Melissa has ideas about that, but that's one of the challenges we see on our end.
Okay, Wisdom?
So I'm going to talk about this from the youth mental well-being and mental health space. I mean, most of you are aware of the abysmal statistics that we're observing out in the world, so I won't rehash them. But I will say this one that keeps me up at night, and it should also do the same for you. The fact that we have been bearing witness to an uptick over the last decade in black youth suicide. And we now know that the ways that we can affect young people and to make a difference is through preventive interventions and early detection. What I see that's happening really as a site of promise for us is that new innovators are starting to develop early warning, early detection technologies that actually build on augmented intelligence, but leverage the wisdom of what we know about young people, black youth in particular, in a way that could help us get them to the right set of services, because 988 is changing. So much is changing in the world. If you don't know, 988 is one of the numbers that you can call if you're having suicidal ideation. So there's an opportunity there as I see founders moving into the space of building technologies that actually create early warning systems and rapid referral pathways. There is an opportunity now as EHRs are being, which are electronic health records, are being redesigned for us to develop the kinds of rapid referral, closed loop responses that actually move black youth, brown youth, indigenous youth to the right kinds of community supports. That is an area that is going to increasingly become a site for innovation as we recoil and retract federal funding and investment. There is no cavalry coming. We are the cavalry.
So the answers that you both gave sort of touch on this concept of power and how we need to get to a point that we're seizing economic power. I had the privilege of representing the Fearless Fund in federal court. And if you all don't know about the case, 2 black women start a venture capital firm. They're looking to support other black women. They get sued. And the argument is, you're giving money to people of color that violates federal law. It's absurd, but that was the argument. So we took the case and we litigated the case, and we got Melissa Bradley to serve as one of our expert witnesses. And Melissa, this is a question for you. I'm going to hand you the mic. You've been in the venture capital space for a long time. And for folks who are thinking about starting their own businesses, whether you're the 300 plus that have been affected or not, you're thinking about getting investments to support your business. What are you seeing are the trends in the marketplace and the opportunities that we may not be highlighting?
Well, first, I just want to acknowledge that you said one of my favorite phrases, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I think there's a couple of things. I think data is showing that while entrepreneurship can be a pathway to wealth, it is not always. And so for those folks in the audience who want to start a business, please do not empty your 401k. Please do not borrow against your home, because you cannot recoup that level of wealth that you have already accrued. And so one is that we need to be smart about that. I think in response to that, what we have seen is where we used to have gaps of friends and family, we now have a plethora of investors who are specifically looking at investing in black businesses. And we have now a trail that you can now secure money from seed stage all the way to Series B, because to the connective tissue, all the black VCs have gotten together and said, how do we create that pathway? On the flip side, though, if you were the founder, I'm going to do the test I always do, because I know this is a smart crowd. What is 2 plus 2? I was wrong. Okay, let me try it again. What is 3 times 3? No, seriously, I need y'all to answer this question like for real. Like, what is 4 plus 4? 8. Okay, but see how long that took? I have to stop getting founders who are afraid to own their numbers. It does not mean a damn thing if you make $1 million, but your expenses are $1,000,001. And so I think it's important that we understand in this world of capitalism, whether it is health or whether it is business, if we do not understand our finances and are not managing them well and leveraging the capitalistic tools that create wealth, then we are to blame, not someone else's system. The final thing I'll say is that in a variety of situations, I think we also have to understand that entrepreneurship takes many forms. No disrespect, but we don't need no more hair care products. No disrespect, but we don't need no more lotion. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that you can't have another brand, but we don't need another company. Why can't we work together? If you were to roll up all the companies on Target's shelf right now that are just selling shampoo and had them under one company but different brands, they would all be profitable in the millions of dollars as opposed to them being negative right now. And so this idea of connective tissue, we talk about it, we don't act upon it. And so this other idea of thinking that we can start a business, or there are lots of businesses out there, black and white communities, where people are like, I'm tired. Entrepreneurship through acquisition is a whole nother pathway. There's a group of brothers, Apis and Heritage out of DC, Phil and Todd, and they are going around and buying businesses that are owned by white people, but who employ majority black people and turning them into ESOPs. So that every single one of those people now own the business they have worked 15, 20 years in. And so I end on, for a group of people whose ancestors experienced far more than what we could ever imagine, we have become too fucking comfortable and are not willing to be uncomfortable to actually achieve the dream they had for us, because we truly are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And right now, we are all letting them down, and we need to figure that out through collective community power.
Love it.
I just a follow-up question, Melissa. Why is it that we're not taking advantage of the collective tissue? It's important because you can't put it on the table without...
Yeah, no.
So why is it that we're not exploring the connective tissue that exists?
Well, one, because I think in a capitalist society, we are looking at everything through the lens of business. And so when I think you had mentioned the mutual aid, they didn't go out and look for a grant to start mutual aid. They started with themselves. You have heard me before where I sit on panels. I may get boosted out, but that's okay because I live here. But if I were to look at this crowd, let me take a look. If I were to look at this crowd, there's over $1 million sitting up in here on your arms, on your wrists, on your shoes and on your feet. If you would take a third of that and give it to your local church, your local youth group, it would make a fundamental difference. Yeah. And so I think when we say that collective power, it doesn't mean we all got to get together and rally, but it means we need to start thinking about what can I do for Black people, not just what can I do for ourselves, which does mean we have to make a sacrifice. And I think that's the least that we can do based on, I know I am sitting here for the sacrifices of my ancestors. My great-great-grandfather was a slave, but I'm also standing on the land of the Wampanoag tribe, who were literally killed and still marginalized on the land of their own. And so it is not about me. What's your name? It's not just about me helping CJ, it's me helping CJ helping somebody else. And whether I know your name or not, the beauty about I'm from New York or being on the Vineyards, that nod, we need to move that nod to figure out how do we negotiate to advance our community.
Powerful.
Thank you, Melissa. So we only have a few more minutes left, but I do want to, Shauna, go back to you about direction for policymakers. Direction for philanthropists, for corporations. Right now, we're seeing some companies, not all, but some companies take a step back from supporting the community. And what's interesting that is not being reported is that of all of the companies that are apparently doing away with diversity, equity, and inclusion, their shareholders are going the other way. 100% of the anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion proposals have failed, 100%. But yet, some of those same companies are, quote, either regressing or doing away with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So as you think about the last word, and you can add as much as you would like to this answer, what direction do you want to give to policymakers, to philanthropists, to corporations in this moment as we are reframing and rethinking opportunity and liberation?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Thank you, Melissa, for your words and your charge. To me, the time is now. The time is now to invest. The time is now to give more. The time is now to have strategic conversations around how we merge and things like that. But for instance, with Camelback, we're a nonprofit. And we give out, $1 to $2 million a year. We get over 500 applications from entrepreneurs who want to start their next venture. And so we need more investment in what we're doing to seed their ideas. And I also think holding true, because I think about the DEI, whatever pendulum you want to call it, it swings back and forth. Mm-hmm. And we are taking notes. Who's standing with us right now? I know that it was very, the last 3 to 4 years to me was very different than the rest of the 20-some years I had been in the work. And so now feels like what we've been going through for the longevity. And I'm thinking about who's standing with us now, regardless of what's happening in the ecosystem. And I ask philanthropists to invest more now. I ask us to think of ourselves as strong philanthropists, because when we didn't have corporate sponsors and large-scale foundations, Black folk were funding ourselves. And so those $5 or $100 a month or a week, that makes a huge difference in our own communities. So for me personally, I'm giving more now, and to the point where it hurts, where I can feel it. There's a difference in what I'm able to do. And so that's what I would ask for companies. That's what I would ask for philanthropists. That's what I ask for ourselves. And I ask us to form collectives that are actioning. How can we act together, right? And recognize this is an opportunity. Now more than ever, it's an opportunity for innovation. For Camelback, we acknowledged or identified our largest cohort ever with 20 entrepreneurs in our last round. And we're looking at how we can support more. So that's what I would say. It's time to act, give more, engage more. We cannot be complacent or silent. And I'll say the last thing is when I listened to on Bernice King's talked about the birthday of Martin Luther King, the same day as the inauguration of Donald Trump. And I felt completely disengaged. And what she said was, our family is happy his birthday is today, on this day, to acknowledge and make sure that we are paying attention. We have to pay attention. And that's what I would say.
So much to say, but so little time. So let me just go straight to the core of it. I don't think that we can shift ourselves from the scarcity mindset that undergirds our inability to form collective impact models without going to the root of the issue. I would ask us to also pay attention to the ways that we're thinking and the ways we're feeling about how we invest, because there is nothing about innovation and investment that's not linked to a psychological state. And I think that for so long, because we have had so many wounds to nurse, so many challenges to go through, so much intergenerational trauma transmitted, that we have learned to attach ourselves to this idea that we must take care of ourselves only. We must build our bunkers, do what we need to do for ourselves. We have always recognized the importance of collective giving, collective investments. Where did we lose that? What kinds of conversations are you having around your dinner table? How are you preparing the next generation? When I stepped into this role at Unified Youth, the one thing I said to the folks that were investing was that I'm not coming into the ecosystem to create competition. We're going to harmonize investments for the greater good of young people. We're going to go grassroots. We're going to fund grassroots organizations that are already doing the work to meet young people where they are, and we're going to make them stronger, more measurable, more impactful, and we're going to tell powerful stories about their work so that we can shine a light on what is already there. So when you're thinking about what you can invest in, maybe it's not for you to go build the thing. Maybe it's for you to wrap your arms around existing work that is happening and to support them in building new models. And the last thing I'll say is that the work I do, and many of us in this room, I'm sure, is all about thinking about the next generation. I think that another part of our wealth accumulation is intergenerational transfer of wealth. How are we thinking about what we pass down? And that is not just wealth that is in the monetary terms. Our intellect is wealth. Our creative potential is wealth. How are we investing in the next generation so that they are prepared to enter a world that is seeking to in some ways, reduce the amount of human capital that is involved in the marketplace? To me, that's the problem to solve. And we're going to have a sustainable intergenerational fight against what is happening right now. There is nothing more important, more fiercely important, I think, right now, than investing in future generations, so that the conversations we're having here will actually lead to something more for them.
Thank you, Wisdom. We can take questions, and if there are any questions, burning questions, please feel free to raise your hand. There's a question in the back.
Thank you. My name is Derek Green. Really nice to hear this conversation today. Critical part. I think a lot of times, like, what's that next step forward? People have ideas all the time. Yeah. And it's always great to hear the philosophical approach to that. But, like, what are the tangible resources that are available to people who can share an idea, like a Shark Tank, something like that? Like, how do we perpetuate this idea generation to really move it forward and take advantage of this time now?
Well, I can tell you what we're doing for young people. We are building tech art innovation hubs around the nation as a part of a wonder ecosystem that we're trying to build so young people can leverage their creativity to innovate and build entrepreneurship skills. So I think that if you're a person that's interested in young people and providing opportunities for them, come see me afterwards. I think that my other panelists can talk about some of the other opportunities that exist. But I like your provocation, because you're also calling us to think about what can we create to actually provide those kinds of platforms. And I think that's also another way to think about how you can invest in the next generation and also invest now to build new economies. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my team would be remiss if I did not say our application for Camelback Ventures opens up on August 11th, and it's open to entrepreneurs who are building ventures in education and in technology. Also, we have started doing funder and founder convenings around the country to have those conversations around what does it look like to build that that connective tissue, as well as the movement that we need to have to make a difference. So we're having one in Chicago the end of September. And then also we're looking at our full ecosystem, not just who applies to our fellowship, who comes to a funder convening. How do we actually galvanize those who are in our ecosystem and our community too? So I'd love to connect with you after about what we're doing. I'm sure you want to share a little bit, Alfonso, about the work you all do.
Sure. So our work is global at the Global Black Economic Forum, and we're looking for a variety of different ways where we can leverage the Black diaspora outside of the U.S. So if you think about economic opportunities that exist outside of the U.S., look at Africa, where by 2050, it will have the largest growing population in the world. So if you just think about that and you think about economic opportunity, you're talking about land, you're talking about telecommunications, you're talking about housing, you're talking about all of the different categories that we have, but many of us are blinded to that because we are blinded to a perception of what Africa represents, and there are opportunities there, including pharmaceuticals, for example. If we're thinking about growing access and we're thinking about opportunities to explore, we are trying to identify those opportunities and make them available for folks here in the US so they can take advantage of them.
Awesome.
Okay, we have a number of questions. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Amy Griffin, and I am just so glad that I made my way here today. I have had opportunities to work in a number of sections with, like, the U.S. Black Chamber. I was part of the incorporation of the Black Chamber, and one of the things that I realized and was struggled with is the fact that we have so many micro businesses as opposed to having people collectively come together to build even small businesses. We know the economy of scale. I'm an estate planning attorney, and I've reached out to trying to create with women across the country, black women across the country, because I have an all-black women firm, with the exception of my husband, but that doesn't count. But with the intention of trying to build a national life estate planning firm, and so many folks said, no, I want to continue to have my one, but we know that a tenth of 10 million is much more than a piece of 100,000. But it's such an interesting conversation when we move beyond our egos to be able to think longer term. And again, tapping into saying what is transferring into our youth, again, estate planning attorney. 26% of black people, 26% of black people have a plan. That means 74% do not. And that's not even a good plan in most cases, right? But what we know is that if we don't have a plan, the plan is made for us. So I want us to be thoughtful about all of these things and not just have a real good time in Martha's Vineyard, but being thoughtful about the call to action to be transformational, hearing what you all said and bringing it to work. Oh, and one more thing. I'm a member of this group called the the BOW Collective, which Melissa is part of, Black Owners Women. And when the Fearless Fund was, Black Owners Women, we're entrepreneurs. The BOW has a revenue of $1 million or more, collectively of $1.8 billion in revenue. Because we know that irrespective, we still can't get access to capital and access to opportunities. And so we know that coming together raises our voices and amplifies. But also, when the Fearless Fund was attacked, we were like, oh, should we scrub our names? Should we just be BOW and not be Black Owners and Women? There's so much out there, but we know that we have to stand firm together. So I thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is not a question. I'll be frame it as a question eventually. I'm from someplace else. Okay, and I've been in this country now for 41 years. 40 years working for the government, one way or the other. And I've heard all the stories about African Americans, about this, about that. But something that worries me more than anything else is the educational system. Educational system. You know, we have a few people at the top collecting money to represent us, but they are representing themselves. You know, I can name it, a couple. And we surrender everything to these people. Sorry to say this, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, gone were the days when the civil rights movement was a cohesive force to move the people. But now we have individuals, and they're making out like gangbusters, showing their faces all over the place. They are the ones representing us. Okay? The other thing that I read a while ago is in the black community, we don't choose our own fights. People choose the fight for us, and we get lost in it. And the people that we worship are the ones that are selling us out. I came here in the country as, is anybody from ICE here? I came to this country as as an illegal alien. But I have raised 2 kids that graduated from UPenn in medicine and one in MBA and JD. So there is something fundamentally wrong in the way we carry ourselves. The most important thing about America came from the ghettos. You go to Asia now, you go to Europe, they want to be like Americans. Then about collectivity. The one thing that one professor said is, there is no unity among black people. We don't trust each other. So how can you get people that don't trust each other to chat,
Sure. Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So the question is, how do we, as black people, end up trusting each other? And I think we only have to look at history, unfortunately, that will show us a model for that. Some project that we will get to a point that we will be forced to trust each other. And that point is coming. Others suggest that we need to create the opportunities where we do have trust. What we also have to recognize is our young people are getting information and misinformation about themselves and who they can trust. And so what I often do when I talk to young people is, if you're about to start a business and you have a white person here and a black person here, who do you trust? Instinctively, based on the information that they have, when we're talking about business, when we're talking about economic opportunity, when we're talking about money, in most instances, the knee-jerk reaction is to trust the white person. And that is something that we do have to change. But I think the theory is, and you can talk about the health theory and the mental health issues, is that we, as a result of what's happening in this country, will be forced to trust each other because we will see the reality that many of us, unfortunately, haven't seen for a while.
So I want to thank our elder. I just recently realized I'm an elder too. My grandbaby tells me that all the time. But our elder brother for lifting up, the sort of elephant in the room. But I also want to raise a counter narrative. Because I do believe, like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, warned us of the dangers of a single story. And I think we've been telling a single story about black folk and our ability to trust each other that gives it more power than it deserves. Because every day I see black folk trusting each other. I saw black folk trusting each other in Mississippi on the harbor, the white folk, and so we trusted. Brother swam an Olympic-style lap across. He had to trust that the other people on the other side would be there waiting for him. I do believe that we have started to sometimes restate narratives about ourselves that give them more power. And I think narrative shift and the storytelling is critically important in this moment, so we should mind our words. I do believe that there is fundamentally a challenge with trust. Trust psychologically thickens and thins through interactions with individuals. Trust is historical, state-dependent, and relational. So trust is built when we are in community with each other. So I do believe that we can fundamentally alter the trust arc in our communities, but I won't buy that we start from the bottom that people say we do. So I would encourage all of us to start to talk differently about who we are, whose we are, and how we support each other.
And we do have to wrap. I know there were 2 questions there. Do you want to ask your 2? Anyone else have a question? Or are you good? Did you have one?
Yes.
Just can you ask it quickly, both of
Yeah.
you? With the
Do
question.
you want to speak?
No.
Oh, okay. I'll be quick. My name is Amber Pressey. Thank you all for speaking. This has been amazing. You spoke about how creativity is going to be like the most important capital that we have in the future for our kids. I also believe that critical thinking is a part of that. And so my question is, what conversations and questions do we need to ask each other, like you mentioned about around the dinner table? What questions do we need to kind of ask each other, both to our kids and to each other, to evoke that creativity, that critical thinking, and also how to just move forward in the next progression?
Before we answer, Angela, what's your question?
It's actually a follow-up, perfect follow-up. I'm Angela Romans. Thank you all so much. It is about this notion of collaboration and connective tissue. What kinds of mindsets or skills do we need in order to build that? So trust is one, creativity is one. What are the other kinds of mindsets and approaches? Like we talked about being, about doing. How do we need to be in order to do?
Wow. Should I? Okay.
You want to go, then I go.
Okay. So quickly, what I would say is that creativity encompasses adaptability, resilience, and a capacity to see the world through a broadened aperture. That skill set we have eroded because we have falsely convinced ourselves that arts, creativity, engagement is a nice to have, not a need to have. And we now know from brain science that actually creativity actually rewires the brain and the neural pathways for young people that put them on the course for upward mobility and potential. So we have to stop talking about creativity in the ways that we have. When I was coming up as a vocalist and singing, people would say, we don't need another black woman singer. Well, actually we do, because singing gave me mathematical skills and ability. It deepened my empathy. It made me a healing justice warrior. Without music in my life, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So I think we have to change the way we talk to our young people about their professions and stop thinking that they have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer to really be someone in the world. How about having conversations with your children around the dinner table that are about wonder and imagination? Start there, and you will be seeding a generation with a different point of view about the capabilities that they have. And I think in terms of collective mindset, we have to first of all get away from this idea that we have to always be going and doing. Being mindful means being aware and present moment to moment, situation to situation. We have got to get back to that as a grounding practice as a people, because if we continue to run on and hustle our way through, we will not make it.
And I would just add building the community. Is it on?
Yes.
Building the community. Over COVID, we started the Onyx Black Wealth Collective with, now we have 700 members across the country, and we're intergenerational. I say we have hundredaires, because I was a school teacher, a few $100s in the bank, to millionaires, people in their 20s to their 70s. And we just started. I was just like, I want to get together with 20 people that I know who care about building black wealth. We started in the fall of 2020, and 5 years later, we've been talking the whole way through. I know that happened for a lot of black communities, where there were a lot of Zoom calls for brothers and sisters and whoever who wanted to have conversations to hold each other in community. Start now in doing that. I think is really important. So that's how I would end, and thank you all for your time. Do you want to say anything?
I just want to thank these 2 leaders for joining us today, and I'll just say, this conversation is about reimagining our future. This conversation is about reimagining innovation, reimagining economic opportunity. And as we think about reimagining what the future could look like, it does require us to dream. And I'll close by saying this. What I often say to CEOs that I talk to who are struggling with where they should be on diversity, I often say is, understand that you support the concept of free enterprise, right? Free enterprise is a concept that have been embraced by neoconservatives for a very long time. And that concept essentially says, I want to be able to run my business as I see fit, free of government regulation. That's what neoconservatives have been saying for a very long time. There's a concept of free enterprise. But They support free enterprise except when it comes to diversity. And this is the kicker. There is no law that prohibits diversity. There is no law that prohibits diversity, equity, and inclusion. And once CEOs decide to cave to a directive from the White House that is not binding, that is not law, they're chipping away at the concept of free enterprise, which gives us the opportunity to reimagine what the future for economic opportunity looks like. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you to the Martha's Vineyard Film Festival.